the thirst is real. Hi BookTube, it's Marianne at We Last Read a Book, and today I have my weekly wrap up, which also happens to be my reading rush wrap up. So I managed to finish all 6 books on my TBR, so I'm absolutely delighted. The only thing I didn't get done was to read one of my books outside, and that was simply because it's pouring down with rain all last week, and today the sun is splitting the trees just to spite me. So that's great. So the books. The first book I read last week was Headscarves and Hymens by Mona Eltahaway. Now this is a harrowing read. It's an important read, especially for anyone who has an interest in women's issues. It's very upsetting. There's a lot of discussion around FGM, sexual violence and domestic abuse, and it's quite graphic. So that's just a little content warning for anyone who's planning on reading it. The book explores treatment and attitudes towards women in the Middle East, and how there are women on the front line right now trying to make a difference for the next generation of women and girls that are going to be growing up in the Middle East. It also takes aim at Western attitudes towards women in the Middle East by defending cultural difference, and shows that there is a very, very vast difference between cultural difference and what would be deemed as human rights violations if they happened anywhere else in the world. It lays out the author's own experiences growing up and experience of others, things that have been in the news, men who haven't been brought to justice for their actions against women and girls, and it's very, very bleak. But the ending of the book, the author remains hopeful that in time differences will be made, women will be viewed equal, and I really truly hope that that's the case. Personally, I had a rough understanding of how life for women was across the world, but I had no idea the extent of how horrific women's daily experiences in the Middle East are. So I do believe it's an important read. I gave this book 4.5 stars out of 5. And I would recommend it to anyone who either has an interest in women's issues or who believes that feminism isn't needed anymore because women are now treated equal and there's equality the world over, because this will be a massive eye-opener for you and a stark reality of how life is, and it comes from a woman who has lived these experiences. So I would advise picking it up. The second book I read was actually on my Kindle. It is The Guest List by Lucy Foley, and the book is a thriller which is set on a little remote island off the coast of Ireland during a wedding. So the book begins at the current moment where a body is discovered at the wedding, and the rest of the story jumps between before the wedding, during the wedding, and then obviously that current moment. And it's told from the perspective of different characters. So you've got the bride, you've got the groom, you've got the best man, you've got the sister of the bride who is also the bridesmaid, Hannah, who is the plus one to one of the men that are taking part in the wedding. There was a couple of mind-blowing plot twists in there, which left me kind of shouting at 1 in the morning to no one in particular, oh my god, I can't believe that just happened. And it was quite an exciting read. It was a bit of a slow burn for maybe the first third, and then it gradually picks up momentum, but that kind of quiet period was necessary to sort of build atmosphere and give you an idea of what the characters were really like. When the descriptions of the place are described, you really can find yourself feeling that kind of eerie, unsettled way that you would imagine that the characters are feeling on this island, where there are dangers there, not only environmentally, but you are so far away that emergency services can't get to you easily. And it's so good. Unfortunately, most of the characters in the book were really unlikable, apart from the bridesmaid. and the +1. For me, the bridesmaid was the best character in the book. Really goes into her own personality and issues that have arisen with her mental health due to past life experiences that she's had. And she, actually, with regards to that, there's discussion around self-harm and suicide. I gave the book 4 out of 5 stars, and the one thing that kept that extra half from coming was there was a bit at the end where there was another plot twist that just felt a little bit too convenient, like it was too much of a coincidence. But it fit in well with the story. I just thought, oh, that was a wee bit too convenient for me. So rather than being a kind of moment, it was more like a, obviously, kind of moment. But again, I've already recommended it to friends of mine that I know are interested in kind of murder, mystery, crime, thrillery kind of books. And I'm glad I read it because I really enjoyed it. So the third book I read was The Princess Bride by William Goldman. And it had been a while since I read it. There were parts of the story that had got mixed up when I was doing my TBR video, and I still love it just as much as I did the last time I read it. I've still not got around to watching the film again because yesterday I had the worst headache ever, and I was supposed to watch it with one of the kids, but I just had to lie in bed because I thought I was going to die. So, The Princess Bride. The story centres around the characters of Buttercup and Wesley, the beautiful girl and the farmhand, who fall in love with each other, and Wesley goes off to seek his fortune even though Buttercup treats him like shit. He still loves her, goes to seek his fortune and basically come back, marry her, build a life for the two of them, etc, etc. And Buttercup thinks that he's died, so she is absolutely bereft and ends up committed to Prince Humperdinck, who is a nurse, and she says, I can never love again, I'm going to marry you, but I don't have feelings for you, and that's just how it is. And Prince Humperdinck is weirdly cool with that. He's just like, yeah, no bother, let's do the thing. But then Buttercup gets kidnapped by 3 kidnappers. We'll come back to those 3 characters in a sec. And is then kidnapped again by the man in black. Again, come back to that in a second. And I realised, closer to the beginning, but more so when she gets kidnapped, that I really don't like Buttercup. I liked her in the film, but that might be because I have a bit of a soft spot for the actress who played her in the film. But she is kind of like this two-dimensional, kind of empty, stupid character who I can't relate to or warm to. It's just, I don't like the character in general. She's so mean to Wesley and then just expects him to love her back. And you can't really just be shitty towards people and then just expect people to love you, because that is hella ignorant. So I had one issue in particular with the story, and it was something that I forgot that happened in the book. It's kind of alluded to in the film. It's more of a threat than an actual action. But when the man in black reveals himself to be Wesley, I need to remember and put a little spoiler warning at the beginning of this section. The man in black reveals himself to be Wesley after slapping Buttercup for lying. Now part of me is going, well, this is set in a kind of medievally type environment, so that would have been kind of cool then. But at the same time, I was like, it wasn't done for like any reason in particular. Like, there's books where stuff like that's happened. Prime example is the first Outlander book. Jamie slaps Claire and it's used for character development. Claire lets Jamie see where that was wrong. Jamie comes from the 1700s where that sort of stuff is cool, like you can beat your wife and that's just how it is. Claire comes from the 1940s and that is not okay. She lets him know that it's not okay. She lets him know how it made her feel. He then feels remorse for his actions and works to improve himself and make sure nothing like that happens again, and is far more respectful towards women, in particular Claire. Whereas in this, it's kind of just glossed over, like nobody brings it up, nothing's really done, it just kind of dangles there. And I mean, it kind of took away from it a little bit. And then basically from then on, it's a race to survive, a race to be in love. And again, Buttercup shows that she's an absolute idiot because she entrusts that Prince Humperdinck is going to save Wesley's life and make sure that he's safe, which is just sheer delusion. Personally, I know if I mean, I'm a little bit biased because I'm more a lover of the film than I am of the book. And I really loved Wesley in the film, and for me, like, I wouldn't be like, bye bitch, you'll be fine, I'm gonna go and marry the prince to protect your safety, when I know for a fact that the prince is an absolute, I'm not gonna use the word I was gonna use there, and he's probably gonna kill him or maim him or hurt him in some fashion. But you know, she's not the smartest of characters, so I wasn't really particularly surprised. The one thing that really makes me love this book so much is the way in which it's told. So basically, it's told from William Goldman's perspective in part. So anything that's in italics is his sort of commentary on the book, and he has read this story by an author called S. Morgenstern, a fictional author. And he basically abridges The Princess Bride and only keeps the good parts of the book in. So it's told as if it's a real book that already exists. So he does a really good job of kind of almost like leading you to believe that this is an abridgment of a longer story. So I love the way that it's done. It is such a good read. It's something that I would recommend to anybody regardless of their reading tastes, because it really is. There's excitement there, there's adventure, there's sword fights, it's just, and there's romance, which I just love, if you're willing to look past the character of Buttercup. So one thing that I do believe is really underrated about the books are the side characters, because I absolutely adore Fezzik the Giant and Inigo the Master Swordsman. They are the only two characters in the book where their backstories are truly explored, and you can develop feelings towards the characters as the story goes on. Wesley's backstory is kind of alluded to in parts, but it's never properly explored, so it kind of leaves it to the imagination of how he was treated as a child and how his upbringing was, etc, etc, etc. But they really delve into Inigo's story and Fezzik's story, and really, although they are deemed as sort of almost bad guys for kidnapping, you just love them and you're rooting for them the whole way through. I loved how the story ended. I loved that there was excitement there, and again, I would recommend it to anybody regardless of their reading taste, because I believe it's one of those books and one of those films that everybody should see at least once. But again, I'm really biased towards the film, although that could just be down to Carrie Elwes playing Wesley, because the thirst is real. And the first time I watched the film, I was like, I'm in love. And then every time I've seen it since, I'm like, I'm in love. And sometimes it's like that. You have to develop a really unhealthy love for a character, and that happened. He played the character so well, and he was so handsome. I need a Wesley. Carrie Elwes Wesley. That's what I need in my life. Just right, I need to calm down. I'm getting overexcited. I'm gonna go and have a cold shower. Moving on swiftly. So yeah, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 stars out of 5, because I just adore it so much. I will even overlook the kind of vaguely problematic scene of the slap, and also the fact that like Wesley didn't automatically just reveal himself to Buttercup and be like, yo, Buttercup, it's Wesley, I'm not the man in black, just so you know. Because I'm like, how long was he planning on leading her to believe that he was not Wesley? Like, you know, it's just such a good book. Please read the book, please watch the film. If you do anything else in your life that is worthwhile, make it that. The next book I read was The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood. Now, I really desperately wanted to love this book because everybody I know has loved this book and I just don't get it. For me, the story was, I know it's a dystopian future, but like, you can't really overthrow a government overnight. Like, there is no exploration of what happened prior to this dystopian future. It's just like, this happened, the women are now breeders, they can't work, deal with that. There is no exploration specifically as to why the wives in the story are infertile and why they need the breeders. There is vague mentions of radiation sickness, war, just standard infertility, so you don't actually know what specifically caused this. Why are the wives infertile and the handmaids aren't? It just doesn't really make sense. So the timeline is kind of unrealistic. And also, I mean, my biggest issue with this book wasn't even story related, it was punctuation related. Now, I was reading a piece of dialogue in the book and it had quotation marks on it. And then I went, wait, this is the first time I've seen a quotation mark, because other conversations in the book had no quotation marks or punctuation around it. So basically, it was like you had a piece of dialogue there with no indication that it was really dialogue. And for me, I went and Googled to see if maybe somebody else had picked up on it, if it was maybe a typewriter issue, a printing issue, if it was done intentionally. And what I could determine from what I had read online was the conversations that are done without quotation marks are conversations that Offred is remembering, and the dialogue with quotation marks are conversations that are currently happening at that time in the book, which is fair enough, but it made it hella difficult to read. I found myself having to reread parts of dialogue that didn't have quotation marks because I didn't realise it was dialogue at the time, and I don't feel that it was like necessary to have done that. No, it just really got on my wick. It made reading the book take even longer, and I'm like, please just give me some punctuation. I don't feel like there was enough exploration of characters in that. One character in particular I was interested in was Serena Joy, who is the wife that Offred is a handmaiden for, and I wanted to kind of know more about her character because she's really sort of bitter and rude and nasty, and I would like to know why. Because, is it because of the infertility? Is there a particular other reason? Like, I would have liked to have known more about her. And also, the relationship between Offred and some of the other characters aren't properly explored. And the ending is very ambiguous. Now, sometimes I don't mind an ambiguous ending, but towards the end of the story, I did actually become kind of invested in Offred and her survival and breaking away from this regime that is oppressing these women. So the ending left me kind of like I didn't love it, but at the same time I didn't hate it, I didn't like it, I didn't dislike it. It's just I wasn't immersed in the story. I didn't enjoy it as much as I thought I was going to, especially because I had seen the first couple episodes of the series and I was like, well, shit, this is going to be a ride and a half. But the book just didn't give that to me the same as the first couple of episodes of the series did. So I'm going to still read the Testaments. I know it's a sequel rather than a prequel, so I'm probably not going to get any further information on what happened prior to this. I'll find out if Offred manages to escape, if she ends up reunited with her actual daughter out with Gilead. I don't know. I'm going to read it anyway because I feel obliged to, because I'm really curious to see if there's any further development on it. But I just don't know why everybody loves it so much. Because if you are going to develop such an oppressive state, it has to build up over time. So I would like to know what's went on behind the scenes that this has happened so quickly. Like, who is responsible for this? How did this happen? So hopefully in the Testaments it'll give me a little more insight as to what happened prior to this, rather than just what happened after this. How it is, and then I'm just going to go and watch the series because, like I said, my experience with the first couple of episodes compared to this whole book were far more positive. And I know it's a hideously unpopular opinion to dislike The Handmaid's Tale, especially as a woman, and especially as having an interest in sort of feminist undercurrents in books. I mean, the one thing that I will say is, out of the dystopian books that I have read, this is the one that seems kind of plausible. Like, this could happen, have been, with women having experienced such degrees of oppression that they are viewed as like a woman legs, and aren't allowed to work and stuff like that. So it's realistic in that aspect, but over a period of time, not just overnight. So like I said, it is realistic. Like, you could see this happening. It's just the circumstances around which of it I don't understand. Don't understand how it happened, don't understand who is fully responsible. I just know that the government was overthrown and we ended up here. So the next book I read, again, was a book that I desperately wanted to love, but didn't really, and it was Such a Fun Age by Kiley, Reid, which was also the book club read. My issues with this book was mostly character related. The only character that I felt warmth towards was the main character, Amira, and the White Lady Alex's daughter, Briar. I think they have such a beautiful relationship, and it was the one thing that kept me going through this book. So basically the story's centred around two characters, Amira and Alex. Amira is a black babysitter, and Alex is a rich white woman who employs Amira. Amira receives a call while she's at a birthday party or a night out, I can't quite remember, and she has to go and quickly take care of Briar because there has been a situation happened at the residence of Alex's family. The Chamberlains, that's their name. And Amira takes Briar to a supermarket that they often frequent, and they're dancing in the shop and having a laugh, and she's keeping her occupied, keeping her happy. And there is a white woman who reports her to security in the supermarket, and basically accuses her of kidnapping a child. There's racial profiling involved, and there's assumptions made, which is very, very important to recognise in our current political and cultural and social climate. And basically the story escalates from there. Alex finds out about it and totally, completely, overwhelmingly overcompensates to try and get in Amira's good graces and prove that she is woke and that she views Amira the same as her as opposed to less than her, and it's just really uncomfortable. It's really, I mean, the character of Alex is totally obsessed with Amira. It reaches a point where she is literally just thinking about her constantly, wants to contact her constantly, wants to be her friend as opposed to her employer, but tries too hard to get there. She tries to relate to her, and it just leaves it feeling kind of uncomfortable, and it really put me off the book in general. Also, there was a situation with a husband who's a newscaster who had made an inappropriate comment with regards to a black man that was featured And that was never explored. Like, did Amira find out about it? What was her views? Like, what were the ramifications and repercussions of that? That wasn't delved back into to see what happened there. I didn't really like the side characters either. Alex's friends were kind of just your standard mum characters, and I think that Alex used her black friend Tamra to kind of appear even more woke than she actually was, and that sort of introduced another dynamic between Amira and Tamra, where Amira just wanted to live her life and have a good time. Another character in the book had taken a video of what happened in the supermarket and basically wanted to turn Amira into this social justice character. And Tamra was very much pushy towards Amira that she should put this video out there to raise awareness that Amira wasn't comfortable with, and then pressured her into wearing her natural hair and saying you should be like this as a black woman, when Amira was quite happily living her life as she did. So, and also there was a love interest of Amira's who turns out might be trash, but you don't actually find out if he strictly is or not. Again, he's a white guy, and Alex becomes obsessed with him. There is a little bit of a plot twist. I don't want to go into too much detail on why she becomes obsessed with him, but there's so many toxic, like, interactions between people. Like, Alex is she has no boundaries whatsoever. She reads Amira's text messages, she goes into her email, she breaks her trust. She has sort of unconscious bias towards her, and the whole book made me feel uncomfortable. The only parts for me that were the saving grace was the relationship between Amira and Briar, the child that she takes care of. It was so pure and wholesome, and it just made me really happy. Again, the ending was kind of underwhelming for me. There were parts of the books I laughed at, parts of the book I cried at, parts of the book where I empathised with characters, and there was other parts where I just thought, oh, you are such an awful, awful human being. And again, the only characters in the book that I felt any warmth towards was Amira and her friends, and also Briar, the child that she takes care of. I gave this book like 3.5 stars out of 5, which is less than I would normally give a book, because normally I find a way to sort of really enjoy it, but even the writing style wasn't particularly good. I don't know, it wasn't for me, and I think there are probably more books out there, more fiction books out there that address white privilege much better, but it does put a focus on people who totally overcompensate and end up causing more harm than good. Like, you can be supportive of a cause and of a situation and of people without going to extremes and making yourself look like a dick. So yeah, it was an uncomfortable read, and again, the author could have written that way. That could have been how it was intended. Again, me reading it as a white woman, did it make me feel uncomfortable because that was actions that I had seen perpetrated by people in my own life? I don't know. But it wasn't as big. Like, there was so much hype about it, and I feel like The Handmaid's Tale and Such a Fun Age were so overhyped that I had maybe set myself up for disappointment because I was expecting too much from the books. I don't know, but either way, it wasn't massively amazing for me. And the last book I read was Flowers for Algernon on my Kindle, and this, along with The Princess Bride, was one of the best books that I read. In fact, it might have been one of the best books I have ever read in my life. So Flowers for Algernon by Daniel Keyes is a book that is centred around a character called Charlie, who is he has learning difficulties and his IQ is extremely low, and he is encouraged to take part in this medical sort of test where they have performed an operation on animals. The one in particular who is focused on is Algernon, who's a little white mouse, and he is the first human test subject. So he's given this surgery, and then his progress is compared with Algernon the mouse, who is extremely intelligent, and it is told through progress reports. And normally I don't like books that are told through the form of a diary or emails and stuff like that, but it was necessary for this, and it was done so well. Again, this review is going to be a little bit spoilery, but I feel it's necessary to describe just how much I love this book and why I appreciated how it was written. So you can see in the first progress report, Charlie's spelling is really bad. He can't express himself the way that you would expect him to be able to. There's no punctuation used, and he is living in this really happy world where he believes that everyone loves him, he has a good life, which he does, technically. He has a job, he goes to school, but he views everything through sort of rose-tinted spectacles. Apart from himself, he has his own sort of issues with confidence regarding his intelligence. He wants to better himself, he wants to be smarter. So after the surgery, you aren't explicitly told that his intelligence is increasing at certain points, but you can see it through the progress reports that his spelling changes, his way of writing changes, his punctuation use changes, the sentence structure changes, and you can gradually see him getting smarter and smarter and smarter. And he becomes aware that instead of these people that he works with being his friends, they're actually mocking him behind his back, and they don't like it when he starts to show some intelligence. They feel kind of threatened by it because he's getting work done fast and he's coming up with new ideas, and they are worried that their boss is going to view them in a more negative light. They can't understand how Charlie got so smart overnight because he doesn't divulge to anyone that he's had this treatment done, as it's an experimental treatment and the researchers told him not to tell anyone. Alongside this, you have the character of his teacher who teaches him at the adult learning centre that he goes to, who his feelings towards change throughout the book, from a sort of admiration of her as a teacher and a friend to a more romantic interest. So their relationship is explored throughout the book. Also, he comes to terms with repressed memories that he has from his childhood with regards to his parents, particularly his mother and his sister, and how he was sent away basically because they thought that they thought there was something seriously wrong with him as a child, and it explores how he comes to terms with how he was treated as a child, how he's being treated now, and the fact that his intelligence increases so quickly to this genius level. He can't control his emotions the same way. He views conversations with other people, he becomes bored easily with conversation because other people aren't as intelligent as he is, and it highlights a sort of theme of, yes, knowledge can change your life and be a positive thing, but it can also be your undoing. And then he ends up, the researchers notice that Algernon the mouse is slowly deteriorating. He's becoming angry, fractious, he's attacking other mice, he is becoming unwell, and it's just a sharp decline for Algernon, who unfortunately eventually dies, which broke my heart. I cried, I was really upset by it. And then Charlie has to come to terms again with the fact that this is possibly not a permanent solution for him. They're still not sure because he's a human as opposed to a mouse. They're still not sure what's going to happen, so Charlie has to come to terms with the fact that he might end up regressing not only to where he was, but potentially worse, where he would need round-the-clock care in a care home. and it's upsetting to see him go through the emotional turmoil of trying to appreciate the fact that he did have this experience and resign himself to the fact that it's not going to remain that way forever. And it's really heartbreaking to see his relationships form and then change and then fall apart, because he develops friendships, he develops romantic relationships, he reconnects with relatives from his past, and it really is, it is emotionally, you become emotionally invested in the story. It's not just a book that you would read and just go, well, that was good, that was great, that was amazing. You do genuinely have admiration and passion and feelings for the characters. Towards the end, Charlie starts to show deterioration in his IQ, and again, with his increase in IQ, it isn't explicitly stated by anyone. You can see it through his progress reports that his spelling starts to change, and I actually feel like I'm going to start crying because it was so sad. You see his spelling changing, his sentence structure changing, the way he's expressing himself changing, and it is just the last sentence in the book. I was crying for ages. I can't believe I'm going back to cry now. I need to gather myself. And it was just so wonderfully done. I have never seen character development done in such a fashion, particularly through the format of emails or letters or text messages or anything like that. It is mind blowing. I love this book so much, and it is a book I would reread again and again and again. And while I said that I wanted to read more sci-fi, while it's classed as sci-fi, I imagine due to the human experimentation aspect of it, it's very sort of low sci-fi. It's not heavy sci-fi. It's more of an exploration of humanity and character and intelligence and relationships. It's just absolutely wonderful. And if you haven't read it yet, please invest in a copy. I think it's only 99p on Kindle at the minute still, and it was just such a worthwhile read. I'm wanting to get a physical copy of it to keep on my bookshelf, so I can pass it around sort of friends and family, because it is such a beautiful, beautiful read. And it honestly, I'm glad that I finished off the reading rush with this, because while there was a few kind of disappointing books like The Handmaid's Tale, and I wasn't so impassioned by Such and Fun Age, this was what I needed to end the reading rush on a high, although my emotions felt very low. Reading wise, I ended it on a high. I loved this book. I read it in one sitting. It only took like 3 or 4 hours, and that was including me stopping to do dishes and eat my dinner and other bits about the house. So it's so worthwhile, and it is the best 99p I have ever spent in my life. So please go and read this. If you have any interest in character development, relationships, anything like that, please, please, please pick this up. It is, you will not regret it, and if you do, I take full responsibility. But yeah, please go read it. So that is the end of my wrap up. I am going to be taking part in the history challenge towards the end of the month, so I'm not planning on sort of starting a heavy kind of currently reading, having multiple books on the go. At the minute, I'm currently reading The Chalk Man by C.G. Tudor that I got in my haul the other day, and also on my Kindle I am reading A Long Way to a Small Angry Planet, which has started off really well. I'm looking forward to reading that again. All I have seen is positive reviews on it, by Becky Chambers. It is a good read so far, and I've got a haul coming I might do it tomorrow, of some queer books that are not erotica that I found on Kindle Unlimited and in Kindle deals, so I'll post that probably tomorrow. And yeah, that's everything. So massive recommendations for The Princess Bride and Flowers for Algernon. If you're going to pick up any books that I've discussed, these are the two that you need in your life. So I am off to go and tidy up a little bit, and then hopefully go and watch The Princess Bride and renew my Wesley thirst. So yeah, the thirst is real. So have a nice day, happy reading, and I'll see you guys later.